And a good evening, everyone. Chris McDonald, McJustice on the Mac Files on another Thursday. We're glad to have our co-host back with us today, Leslie Birkland from the big state of Texas. And it's always good to have you. Good to see you, friend, as always. I'm looking forward to this chit-chat again, but I got some cases we're going to sort of banter back and forth. But good to see you. Great background. I love the background. And I was joking with her before we came on. I normally don't get this dressed up for something like this. I was on an interview before, and I just got lazy. I didn't want to take the tie off, so I'm a little dressed up for this today. But it's good to see you. It's always good to see you, and I've really got some riveting stuff to talk about, but hope everything's well with you, my friend.
Everything is terrific, and I am in front of my barn. So you get dressed up, and I go out to the barn. So.
Only on McJustice, only on the Mac Files do we have such a wonderful combination where the host is in a tie and my friend's in a barn. So that's how things work here, Birkland. So that's all right. People are used to that. But it's good to
we need to coordinate.
We do need to coordinate. Yes, I should have brought my overalls because old McDonald.
What are you wearing?
Yeah. Old McDonald did have a farm, so I guess some overalls and little straw hat would have been apropos today. We have to do that next week. If you're gonna have the barn background next week, I may have to get me a pair of overalls or something. Yeah, pitchfork. And I don't think McJustice would be the same with that. I think that's a great idea. Have a little fun with this. That's great, buddy. Hey, we're gonna get to the cases in a minute. I want to run some things by you though here generally at the beginning today. Look, I know you've had to listen to this the same way I have over the last 3 or 4 days, this explosion that has hit the capital of our country over these 4, they call them the squad. I heard somebody tell me this morning, my guest who's going to be with us tonight, called them the gang, the jihad gang.
The squatters.
The squatters is a better term. I know this is McJustice, and we can sort of tie it into justice, but I just want to get Leslie Birkland's opinion on these women. Leslie, I tell you, we live in a free country, and I guess in a way this is about justice in this sense. We live under a nation that has a First Amendment. You can say whatever you want to. And I know that we on the right, we get irritated by the left because they say some pretty vile stuff. But look, if the First Amendment don't protect that, it doesn't protect anything, no more than it protects us from saying what we want to say. But when it comes to leadership, when it comes to representing the country and sitting in a place of power where you're making policy decisions that don't just affect the people that elected you, but it affects everybody. It affects the whole country. And you're hating the country. I find no problem whatsoever with what President Trump said to these women. If you don't like it here, you're free to leave. He didn't tell them to leave. He said, if you don't like it, you're free to leave.
Well, President Trump said it to anyone. He didn't pick out each one of these women. He said it in general terms, but I think that we all know who he was referring to. If you are anti-Semitic, if you are a terrorist sympathizer, if you are a socialist, if you want to have open borders and don't care about the sovereignty of our country, you know what? You can go home. You can go back either to your country or just get out of Congress and do something else. Don't try to rule us. And what he said is exactly what we were all thinking.
Absolutely.
What they did, thinking that they were so very clever, was turn it around, line up these gals and say, well, we're women of color. He is not only, xenophobic because he hates people that are originally from other countries. He is racist because we're women of color. He is a misogynist because we are female. They just group themselves so that what they said is sort of taken away. The anti-American, rhetoric that they're just spewing is sort of on the back burner, and calling him a racist, because that is the new narrative that is going forward before the 2020 election, is that Trump is a raging racist. And even some of the newspapers will say, and his racist things that he said about these women. Well, he didn't actually pick out each one. I think we could figure out each one. The one that really surprised me is that the new one that joined the group,
Presley.
Ayanna Presley. And Presley. And what she said was most shocking, calling out Black women. If you're not going to have my Black voice, then go away.
Ain't that amazing?
Yeah, that's all she wants. I mean, she was referring to black voice, meaning her black voice, her democratic, her liberal, her progressive black voice. And you're not even, if she's not even going to recognize you as a black woman or a male, if you think anything other than the way that she thinks.
You know what's so hypocritical about that? That's true racism right there. What she said, Leslie, where they're accusing the president of being basically standing up for the country is racism, and that's been the new mantra of the Democratic Party. The Democrat Party, not the Democratic. There's nothing democratic about them. But that party has turned any argument that is pro-American into a racist claim. And what Presley said to me, I'll agree with you. That was the most offensive of all of it. I'm used to Omar spewing her anti-Semitism. I'm used to Tlaib saying that the Holocaust had a common effect on me. I'm used to AOC being dumb as rocks. And she's turned all the bonds. We don't even joke about bonds anymore. We don't have bond jokes no more. We have AOC jokes. But the Presley thing disturbed me because she did label black people, and it wasn't just blacks. If you listened on to the speech, she called out Muslims, she called out Hispanics, she called out pretty much every race out there and said, if you don't toe, like you said, the Democratic progressive line, we don't think your voice belongs here. And I'm thinking to myself, if a white person put Ariana Presley in a white body, okay, think what would have happened to her in Congress, what Nancy Pelosi would have done to her, and what all of Congress would have done, and the Democratic machine would have done, and the media, and God knows what Hollywood would have said about her had she been white and said those same things.
Yeah, exactly. What's so interesting is just today on Twitter, Omar just tweeted out, this is a movement, people. Our squad, they call themselves the squad of four, whatever. We have a movement, join our movement, and she actually has a place where you can sign up. And it's racial, economic, and let me see, there's a couple other, environmental justice. So basically what she is saying is that we need to be socialists. We need to, divide people by race. And we need to really believe in this global warming, this climate change, and focus on that. That is the movement, but she's calling it justice. And people are signing up. A lot of them, I read some of the tweets, of course, some of them are like, you know what, you married your brother, go home.
Exactly.
Hashtag go home.
Go home, exactly. Hashtag incest illegal in America. Look, I'm going to ask you about that because, as you know, this really does get into the legal part of this a little bit with her. Two things. I'm glad you brought that up. It was reported that, let me talk about Omar first. The media is in full-blown protection mode today. They're covering for her. Acosta went out there and basically slammed the president for even bringing this up. And, President Trump, in that little mini press conference right before he left for Greenville, somebody asked him about this, and you could hear the reporter out there saying, these were just baseless accusations. These were baseless accusations. And President Trump turned to the reporter and said, but you're the one asking me about it. Well, then why are you asking me about it? He said, I heard that like you all have. He said, I'm sure if it's true, there'll be investigations into that. He never said that she married her brother. He just said, look, he said, I'm like you all. I've heard that same thing, and I'm sure that people are looking into that. And then that's when they screamed at him. But if it's proven, Leslie, and I want to talk with her about her first. If it's proven that she did lie on her form to get into the country, to basically become a citizen of this nation illegally, and she won't be the first Democrat, Barack Obama, to lie about his heritage and his origins. But does she have legal jeopardy, not only for basically being a citizen, but how about being in Congress? Isn't that expulsion area?
I believe so. I believe that she needs to be expelled and she needs to be deported. Because of trying to come into this country. She did come into this country illegally, and she did marry her brother, I believe, based on the recent news that has come out. just over the last couple of days, where they're really putting all the documents together and
Yeah.
connecting the dots. And what I also find is really interesting is there is a journalist who just not so long ago went to Somalia as proof that Somalia is a better country than America. And this person, this journalist, took beautiful pictures. I was reading all of the tweets saying, you know, beautiful pictures of animals and the terrain and people, you know, shopping. And then just a few days ago was murdered in a hotel.
Exactly.
So by terrorists. So there you have it, you know.
Only in America would be somebody that stupid to go over to a country, a terrorist country, full of Islam, full of jihadism, and you know, I don't mean he gets what he deserves, because I hate any time. Look, we all don't want to get what we deserve, but ultimately, when you do that and you pay the piper like that, the piper's coming back to be paid. And you don't trash a country in another country. And Leslie, Somalia is not a better country than America. And I think that's what President Trump's message was to these ladies. Instead of trashing our country, instead of being ugly and hateful to us, go back and fix your own countries. And I don't think there was nothing wrong with that. I don't think it was morally wrong what he said. I don't think it was politically wrong. I know some of the Republicans turned coat on him, and Romney and all this bunch, but I think he was square on.
Would anyway.
Yeah, he was going to say it anyway. Curious, another thing that developed last night, I was ending my show last night, and for those of you that didn't get to see Greg the Hydrogen Man, you need to watch last night's Mac Files. I normally don't aggrandize ourselves and promote ourselves a lot on this show, but I want to just brag a little bit tonight. That show last night was powerful, and if you've got ailments of any kind, listen to what Greg said and get back with us, and I'll just give a little.
Is this about water? Is it a special?
Yeah, it's hydrogen. It's a machine that basically takes hydrogen and turns it into a healing agent, and you breathe it in, but you also drink it. It's very powerful, and it was some good stuff, and it was a great show last night. But at the end, as I was getting ready to sign off, a breaking news story came up. To somebody sent it to me that Rashid Tlaib's daddy, this is crazy, this gets into La La Land territory, her daddy comes out last night late and says she lied about where she lived. Now, I don't know what it is about fathers and daughters in the Democratic Party. It's the same thing that Kamala Harris's daddy did, basically sold her down the toilet. But Rashid Tlaib's daddy says that when she ran, that she lied about her address in that district, and she really had no business running in that district. Now, again, another legal question to you. If that's proven to be true, is she in legal jeopardy? I would say yes.
Well, I would say yes, but you know, here in Texas, you don't actually have to live in the district where you're running. So you can be outside of the district.
Okay.
So it depends on the state. So we would have to go to where's she from?
She's from, that's the one from Michigan. But don't they have to sign a statement from the Federal Election Commission that all these statements are about true?
They do have to give an address, and it has to be their real address.
Okay.
Oftentimes people are just on the border of a district, or they're actually even outside their district. I have a friend who ran, who lived in Harris County and ran in Montgomery County for U.S. Congress, was criticized for not living in that district, but admitted he didn't live in the district, thought he would be really good at representing that area. However, you know, he didn't win, so it was sort of a moot point. But it wasn't something that was illegal, and I do not know in that state
Okay.
what the restrictions are.
Fair enough, and we need to look into that. It was just a late breaking story last night. I just thought I'd run that by you, but it sort of stinks to me that you do stuff like that, and that just goes to show her character even more, what kind of person she is. You know, that she wanted to get power. We got David Rubin coming on our show tonight, and one of the things David Rubin wrote about, he wrote a book back during the Obama years, and he predicted that the powers that are over America, and he's talking about the deep state, people that hate this country, want to destroy it, they were going to finance American-hating, Islam-loving, jihadist-loving candidates that they would subvert, they would get embedded in our government and subvert it from within. And Leslie, I'm going to tell you something, we're witnessing that right now in 2019. We're going to move on from this in a minute, but we're witnessing that right now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are just terrorists, jihadists, Al-Qaeda sympathizers. You know, they ask that that the courts will be lenient. Of course, we're talking about Omar, be lenient on some terrorists. I mean, it's just outrageous that is not in the news 24/7, so that we know who these females are, and what they are. That they're just not the squad that has this great new movement.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. We got to fight it. I don't care if they're black and female. I could care less about that. And I'm going to tell you something. Those of us out here on the right, and those of us out here that are squeamish about this and say, well, if we go after them, we're going to be called racist. Honey, you're already being called racist. If you go after them,
racist for having this flag here on your show.
Absolutely. You probably will be.
I walk out my front door, whatever I do, I'm racist. So there's nothing, I'm a Christian, I'm racist. By the way, there is a big attack on the Christian church, which is just the most shocking thing. Sorry to change the subject.
Oh, go ahead. You're fine. Go ahead.
There's a lot of, pastors that now are kind of going left. And to me, it's surprising and changing what's in the Bible and, just to appease the left to make, especially in regards to gender, in regards to a lot of things. And that was really scary to me.
Right.
Because as Christians, we need to be together. As the good guys, we need to stick together. As the ones for justice, the ones for, our country, for America first. And, these terrorists are sneaking.
Oh, without a doubt.
Hey, you know what? They're probably going through like the tunnels, all those El Chapo tunnels.
And speaking of El Chapo, good transition. That's why I've got her on the show. She's so smart, so brilliant. Just transitions beautifully to our first case. El Chapo gets life in prison, and the New York Post headline basically was sort of, I shouldn't laugh at a misfortune to this, but the way they worded it was that he will never see his beauty queen wife again. That ain't the only thing El Chapo's never going to see again. He's never going to see daylight. Probably a lot of other things that El Chapo won't be doing for the rest of his life either. But he does get life in prison, Leslie, for all these drugs.
Plus 30.
Plus 30. Yeah. So pretty much he will not see the light of day again. Now, couple of things on this. Look, I believe the sentence is right. It's justice. Man was one of the biggest drug lords in Mexico and really over the cartels that have wreaked death and destruction on this country and Mexico and really the whole world. And this meth,
what he brought in, the drugs that he brought in, which is cocaine and heroin and marijuana and meth. Those 4 drugs, really, he supplied the world.
He did.
World via America. By way of the tunnels. I mean, he's a tunneler.
He was a tunneler, yeah.
He was able to make, and some of them are still around and they're blowing some of them up, but are covering them up. But I mean, think about one time when he escaped from a prison, he dug a tunnel. The man is, he's really good at tunneling. I don't think he's going to be tunneling at that Colorado, Denver, Colorado prison, which they also refer to as the Alcatraz of prison. So
it is, yeah. And they said they got like a 4-foot window is all he's got. I mean, he's going to be in solitary confinement, I'm sure, but he's going to live. That's all the rest of his life. He's going to be looking out of a 4-foot window. Couple of quick things about him that was interesting to me was Saturday night when this blackout hit New York. A little unknown fact about Chapo was that he was 3 doors down in that same facility, Leslie, than none other than Jeffrey Epstein. I'm sorry. It was Jeffrey Epstein. Him and Epstein wound up in the same prison for a few hours over the weekend, 3 doors down. And when that blackout hit, everybody was worried to death that, it may have been either an attempt on Epstein's life, but I'm not so sure it wasn't an attempt on Chapo for this reason. Chapo's been singing to the feds, from what I'm hearing. Rumors, what my people are telling me inside, at least, they feel pretty confident that this is happening, that he's given up a lot of high-named, high-profile politicians, including one Paul Ryan, including one Mitch McConnell, certainly Nancy Pelosi, Schiff, the guy in California from your former neck of the woods, Jerry Nadler, a lot of big-name politicians that he has named that said basically that they were paying money to to make sure that no effort was to succeed in the building of the wall, that no effort to stop the flow of the stuff over the border was to be done. And you look at the actions of Paul Ryan over the last week or so, where he comes out and he slams the president, trashes Donald Trump like there's no tomorrow. And then, you know, President Trump hits back. I mean, that's one thing about President Trump. You don't hit, this is not your typical, this ain't the president we grew up with in the Leave It to Beaver years. This is President Donald J. Trump. He will hit back, and you hit him publicly, you better get your, because he's not going to take it down. And I don't blame him. I wouldn't either. And, but Paul Ryan's name has come up numerous times from what I understand, Leslie, and it makes sense because he's done nothing but hinder. While he was Speaker of the House here in the first 2 years of President Trump, he did absolutely nothing to help fix this border situation down along that border. Nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he did. And so, and I believe that. I've heard, I mean, it's interesting that you're saying that you have some sources that you know, you can't say who they are that can confirm this, but I've been hearing this, you know, over the last couple of years. You know, what El Chapo, whatever. You know what that means? You know what El Chapo means?
What does it mean?
It means short. He's 5'5". So I always wonder if he actually appreciates that name. It means short. He's a little bitty guy. Something back about him when they talk about the beauty queen wife that he's never going to see. I read this article where, like, oh, how sad that is that he isn't going to get to see his beauty queen wife or his 2 twin daughters that are 8 years old. And his attorney was saying how horrible that was, and how could they do this to this man? And I'm just thinking, this man has murdered hundreds and hundreds of people, and all the lives that he's taken away from all of the drugs. I don't give 2 or 3 straws about if he gets to see his wife ever again or his 2 twin 8-year-old daughters, but how about his other children? No mention that he's been married many, many times. No mention that he has multiple children that he doesn't, you know, get to see. But just because they want to pull at our heartstrings, the news. Like, these little 8-year-old girls will never get to see their dad again. That's probably a good thing for them.
More than likely. And let me just say this about that. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's not just the drugs. There's good indication that Chapo was one of the most ruthless cartel leaders. I mean, he'd have people whacked, he'd have people killed, and the blood. Look, those families are not going to see their spouse either. And those families are not going to see their children again. And those families are not going to see the light of day either. And look, he's lucky. And under my justice system, I'm not so sure I wouldn't have sought the death penalty for him. But they gave him life and plus 30. And, you know, I hope he spends all those days. And look, I don't mean this to be flippant. I really mean this. Maybe somewhere along this road before he dies, he'll find Christ. He'll find God. But Leslie, as the man stands right now,
I love that you said that.
Yeah, I do. I don't wish anybody. Look, I don't care how bad they are. God's redemption is very powerful. But if in the state that he's in right now, let's just say that he remains in this state, he's going to face a bigger justice than anything we can give him. And there's going to be a lot of blood on his hands before God if he doesn't find a place of repentance. And excuse me just a second. Africa calling. Yeah. Popular guy today. Popular guy. Let me move on. Interesting talk about Chapo, but yeah, it's very very interesting there. Let me move on to this other story.
Oh, wait, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
The billions of dollars.
Yes, that's what I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay. First of all, I do not know where the money is. Who is holding it? Who has to apply to get it? And how does that work? Do you know, Chris?
The government has seized it. I read a report on Fox Business. We actually had the story in our newspaper last night, Leslie. And what they're doing right now, I think that is to be determined right now what they're going to actually do with it. But they have seized close to $12.6 billion of his assets. He is poor now. He's got no money. I mean, they seized all of his assets, and the government, both American and Mexican authorities, have done that. And I think that'll be a story we can follow on the show, because I'm glad you brought that up, because I knew there was something we didn't talk about. But that's right, the money from all this empire is no longer resting in his hands. Now, what I do hope the government does, and this is the humanitarian side of me, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but if he does have children, I hope that they at least leave some to the children, the 8-year-old, the twins. Put it in a trust, put the government over it. I don't care if even they put a government official over it, but put that money over that child so they don't go wanting and pay.
I believe that they do that, Chris. I believe that that is something that is in the criminal justice system.
And they should be.
Who are married to somebody who is not a criminal, that they do set aside. Like, for example, if you're a drug dealer and you're caught and you own a home, but you're married, they don't necessarily take your home, or they take half of the value of your home. I mean, there is a system. So I believe that his wife and children will be taken care of, that they won't be living a life of destitution.
Yeah. Good stuff, Leslie. Thank you there, dear. Let me go into another case that sort of hit the airways yesterday, and it sort of took me a little bit by surprise, even though my dear friend Tiffany Fitzhenry, who will be on the show in the next day or two, told me this was not something to be worried about because there's more coming of this, that he's not going to escape justice. But one Kevin Spacey had a sexual assault case dropped against him, the one that was in the news. Let me read this out of the again, the Page 6 website, page6.com. It says the sexual assault case against Kevin Spacey has been dropped. According to Massachusetts prosecutors, the decision was made, quote, due to the unavailability of the complaining witness, said Cape and Islands District Attorney Michael O'Keefe in a document filed Wednesday, which would have been yesterday. Kevin Spacey, 59, has been accused of groping an 18-year-old man as recently as July 2016. The former busboy refused to speak in court earlier this month, invoking the Fifth Amendment after being questioned by the House of Cards star's lawyer without text and Snapchat messages that could prove the actor's innocence. He initially denied deleting the messages, which, according to Spacey's attorney, Alan Jackson, could possibly prove he consented. The entire case is completely compromised, he said. The case needs to be dismissed, and I believe it should be dismissed today. A hearing has been set for July 31st before prosecutors decided to drop the case on Wednesday. Now, Tiffany Fitzhenry, on her website, tiffanyfitzhenry.com, wrote an article about 2 months ago where another corroborating witness against Kevin Spacey was found murdered. So, goes back to our justice system, friend. Let me tell you something. These are real players in this, and this is not some kind of game of Monopoly. The people that we're trying to take down with this pedophile and this sexual assault and all these things, because there's rumors of Kevin Spacey is, and again, we're not accusing anybody without merit here, but I will tell you, there's basically stuff out there that is clear that he's a pedophile, that he's done this to children. I mean, the guy was an 18-year-old. This case itself may go away, but there's other cases that are not going to go away with him. And I'm just curious, when you heard that the case was dropped, what was your thoughts on that?
Well, being from Los Angeles, I've heard about Kevin Spacey for years and years and years. That he is a pedophile, that he is, likes men,
right?
Boys. So when it all broke, that wasn't a surprise to me. And I believe that there are many, many cases. I mean, as much as 60. I believe 60 people have come forward saying that he, sexually harassed them. This case, I think, is unique, and there's a lot more to it, because this kid was 18. He was probably enthralled that this celebrity wanted his phone number. Obviously, they exchanged phone numbers. If they hadn't done that, there wouldn't be any exchange or text messages. So, and what happens when you go to these court cases is that they will take that 18-year-old and destroy his life, every person he's ever been with, or anyone he's ever been in love with, or any relationship that he's ever had, any sexual relationship, any contact, everything comes out and they absolutely destroy him. What I thought was interesting is that he pled the fifth.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't know is you can't plead the fifth on certain questions. Like if I'm in front of the grand jury and they're going to ask me 10 questions, there's 3 questions I really don't want anyone to find out about, I have to plead the fifth on all the questions. It's across the board. You can't pick and choose which questions that you're going to plead the fifth. So
interesting.
The fact that he pled the fifth, there very well could have been just only 1 or 2 questions that he just didn't want to answer.
Gotcha.
Also, his family saying that they had a civil suit against Kevin Spacey, and that's been dropped. And the attorney is saying that there was no settlement. Their attorney, the family's attorney, the 18-year-old's family's attorney is saying that there was no settlement. And I find that very hard to believe. Because in a case like this, when it's dropped, typically there is some language that's written, and there is where you can't even talk about it. You can't even mention his name or even the case anymore. And there's, if there is a settlement, you're not allowed to say there's a settlement. But yet you can still say there wasn't a settlement, because then you're saying that there is a settlement, because you're not allowed to say the settlement or disclose, anything about it. So I was really, when I was reading the article, thinking this is really interesting. I kind of felt sorry for this kid. Maybe he wanted to be in the limelight. I think it does take away from from other people that have cases against Kevin Spacey where they really didn't have the power. They didn't have the wherewithal. They may have been underage. They may really have been harassed. And so those cases are going to come forward. But from Kevin Spacey and his team, they're looking at it like he's fully exonerated from everybody, just because of this one case.
You think he was intimidated or threatened?
I believe he was, because it's just all so untoward. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, none of it makes sense to me either. Because they had a pretty ironclad case against him.
To plead the fifth, how can they proceed? The prosecutors are like, we can't proceed when the person that made the claim is simply won't come forward or say anything. So I think that he's scared. I think that there was something threatening, and I think that they also may have found out some things about this kid that he just didn't want to be known. And
Leslie, I tell you, I was a journalist years ago. That's where I got my start in all this, and I don't want to get off track with the details of this, but I tell you, these cases like this, whether it's a female or a male, it don't matter. It could have been a female that he groped. This is so hard to prosecute, and our justice system gets tangled in so many webs with these people, because I sat through this. My first ever rape trial I covered as a beat reporter in Thomasville, Georgia, years ago. The hair was getting gray then. It wasn't as gray and white as it is now, but it's been many a moon. I never will forget sitting through that rape trial. It lasted 2 weeks, and the first week when I heard all the testimony by the prosecutors, because the DA goes first. And this was a high-ranking person in our community that I lived, and he was a medical professional, well-respected. Family was well-respected. But I'm going to tell you something. By the time that first week ended, I thought we had a monster in the courtroom. I did. I thought, man, this guy is nothing but a monster. And then when the defense took over the second week, then I began to realize how complicated our justice system is. Because let me tell you something, they didn't go after him. They went after the victim. They went after her. And I don't know whether he raped her or not, but I'll tell you what happened. He got acquitted because she went to a department store 2 days after the alleged rape, applied for a job, and put the doctor down as a reference. And it's sort of hard to explain away why a man's raping you on Monday night and you're applying for a job Wednesday and putting his name down as a reference to call for a job. And again, I don't know what happened, but the point I'm making is these cases always get really convoluted. They're really tough to prove. They're tough to sit through because you don't know what to believe. And in this case, I don't know what to believe. There's no doubt Kevin Spacey probably did grope this kid. But again, if he's not willing to talk about it, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. It's like the old famous line from Tom Cruise and A Few Good Men. It's not what I know, but I got to prove it. I got to prove it in a courtroom.
Yeah. Well, that case when you're describing it was actually reminding me of, again, Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton.
Bringing up this, basically re-raping a 12-year-old girl
I know.
that had been raped and laughing about it, because not only are they hard to prove, when you come forward, you have to know that your life, every single thing that you've ever done is going to come out. Now, with rape victims, there is something that a lot of people don't know is sometimes they're in denial. They don't know what to do. They also feel responsible that they somehow were culpable in this, that they allowed this to happen. They were there at that time. So when you said that this woman, in the case that you're referring to, put him down as a reference, that wouldn't hold any weight to me if I was a juror, because of her state of mind.
I'll agree with that, and that's what made this case so weird. But it did hold. I think it ultimately held water with the jury in that town because, again, it was well respected. She was an outsider, and it was look, it was ugly stuff. I'll have to maybe share some details of it one night on the McJustice show. But it was some pretty riveting stuff. And again, I learned a lot. I learned a lot in those 2 weeks. Probably more about the justice system in those 2 weeks. It got me. I guess that case has always stuck out in my mind through the years because, again, you don't know. Only two people. I put it like this: 3 people know the truth in all these cases: God, the victim, and the perpetrator. Ultimately, that's who knows the truth, and it's tough to prove that in a courtroom because if the victim, and this is, I'm not saying this is fair, but the reality of it is this. Look, her motive for going to that department store, as you said, she may have been messed up. She may have been so traumatized, didn't even realize what she was doing. But unfortunately, the way people look at that is not the same as we probably should because we don't look at it that way. I mean, if I'd have been on that jury, I may have taken that into consideration, but I would have asked the question of all the people, because that was the only, I think what struck me was he was the only reference. It wasn't that she had listed anybody else. It was like he was the only person. And again, that's just human nature in us. But that's why it makes this whole thing about rape and groping and these claims so difficult. And I feel for the victims. I'm not trying here to prop up the people that's doing this stuff. I mean, they are monsters. And they need to spend the rest of their natural freaking born life in prison for the rest of their life with Chapo. They need to have a cell with Chapo and this dude, or if he's guilty of this crap, right beside him.
I'm not opposed to castration.
I didn't think you would be. Hey, a similar story here along these same lines deals with another sexual predator, Mr. Harvey Weinstein. A story came out of the News Hub website just a few days ago. Another victim, she stepped up and she said this: a New Zealand-born model who claims. Oh, before we do that, though, I do want to read just the headline. If you'll let me do this real quick, from Tiffany Fitzhenry's website on Spacey, and we're not going to stay on Spacey much longer. But her first paragraph, it was a whistleblower, and Tiffany wrote this just a few months ago. The first whistleblower to go public with allegations branding Kevin Spacey a sexual predator is dead, and her grieving family is demanding answers. And a world-exclusive Radar Online revealed yesterday that investigators have launched a murder probe into Linda Calkin's mysterious death, while 59-year-old Spacey faces a felony charge of indecent assault and battery for allegedly groping a young man in Massachusetts. So this was tied together. This whistleblower was tied to this case, and then on Wednesday he walks. It's eerie. It's eerie stuff. We're gonna follow this because the whistleblower thing is interesting and so forth.
In Hollywood and in politics, you are risking your life being a whistleblower.
You said it. Are you kidding me? Absolutely, you are. It's crazy stuff, isn't it? This victim, though, with Weinstein, it's interesting. She's a New Zealand-born model, and when you pull the website up, which we've got the picture up here, she has now claimed that she's a victim of the disgraced movie mogul. She says, Leslie, that there are thousands of others and at least 2 more Kiwis who were allegedly assaulted by him. Brock says she's now moving back to New Zealand from the U.S. with her daughter to escape. Zoe Brock alleges that she was harassed by Weinstein as a young model, and that her story and the stories of those who have come forward are just the tip of the iceberg. There are 100 women who have come forward, and we know half a dozen more, and they're not the same half a dozen. She told the AM show out of Massachusetts just yesterday, quote, "My guess is that there are a couple of thousand Harvey Weinstein's victims out there. I know I'm not the only one in New Zealand. There are at least 2 more. She alleges the assault took place as a young model in 1998. Now, I've done a lot of talking. I'm going to give it back to you. You're from Hollywood. I'm sure the rumors about Weinstein were the same as they were about Spacey, because this guy, he's a monster. He's a predator. But thousands of victims, that That's a lot. That's a lot of victims for one man.
Yeah, I think that it's quite shocking, but at least with Weinstein, I think that he has completely 100% lost his career. He's lost his wife. He's lost, everything because of his actions and everything coming through. And he is a perverted man. I've read a lot of the people that have come through. And yes, being in Hollywood, everyone knew about Weinstein. It was almost a joke. People would make little like, oh, he Weinsteined me, when someone would go to an audition or go to, the casting couch, as they call it. Unfortunately, with some of these guys, and this also happens in the modeling industry, is when you do as a woman and you are auditioning like for someone like Weinstein, and then you sleep with them because they want you to, they actually will give you the job that you are auditioning for. And that's the part that's unfortunate. So a lot of the gals are willing to do this, and then some of them aren't. They reject it, or some of them realize later that they were taken advantage of, but yet they have an illustrious career and they have to keep it under wraps, and they don't want it to come out, what they had to do. But thousands and thousands, that's seems like he'd be an awfully busy man. I don't know about thousands and thousands, but I'm pretty sure he has raped, and plus he had more perversions. I mean, he liked people taking showers in front of people or just having them get naked. I did read the story on the gal, and apparently she was set up by her agent to meet with him and to sit next to him, like at the Cannes Film Festival. And what I thought was really interesting is that's not uncommon, because it goes from the model or the talent to the agent, sometimes the publicist. They set these things up, and I've witnessed it, especially when I modeled in Europe. I witnessed it all the time. A group of girls would all of a sudden go to, some other country, or go down to Cannes, or go to, especially the Middle East, and they would come back with $10,000 American dollars.
Wow. Wow.
Because they went and they did their thing, and they actually got money, and they came back. Now, my agencies never asked me to do it, because straight up, I was like, I'm an American girl. Nobody's going to touch me. If I get a modeling job, it's going to be on my own merit. It's not going to be because, I slept with somebody. But unfortunately, even in that industry, if models slept with the photographer, they ultimately did get the job. So as opposed to, because if they didn't, then no one else would sleep with them. So
what you're telling me, this has been a pervasive atmosphere, a culture of this has been going on for many, many decades out there. And we're going to get to the final story about Operation Broken Heart, but it sort of ties into the pedophilia stuff with the children. I'm getting so many stories, so many numerous guests coming on saying what's going on out there. And Leslie, it just seems to me that you take your life into your hands these days to sign up for anybody has an aspirations to be an actor, an actress, Broadway person, a musician, a child actor, the commercials, whatever it is. It just seems like it is a death wish. It's a death wish to be involved in Hollywood right now. I just look, I've never seen anything that's more distorted and dirty. And it's almost like, I think that folks like yourself that have been in the middle of it, you all have always known about it. Maybe we out here in the John Q public suspected it was sort of like that. But, it's just been an exposure of this over the last 2 to 3 years that it's just been blowing my mind how nasty and dirty that place is out there in Hollywood, and the demonic stuff that goes on.
And the parents that know what's going on.
Yes.
Sacrifice their children.
Yes.
Their children can be famous, and that they can live vicariously, through their kids.
Do you think Weinstein will walk like Spacey, or do you think this is an ironclad case against him?
I think that there's too many women
have
come forward and said, there's only one, sort of like with Kevin Spacey and the 18-year-old and pleading the fifth. There's one gal that's accusing Weinstein, and that's Ashley Judd.
Yeah, I heard about Ashley.
Judd said that he ruined her career because she wouldn't sleep with him. Well, I heard before that she did because she ended up doing 2 movies. And Ashley Judd has some mental problems, and so I hope that she doesn't ruin it for all the other women.
See,
all the other women that have come forward. And
it goes back to my story a while ago. Look, I don't. To this day, that case was almost. We're going on 30 years. That was 1991, 92 when I sat through that rape trial. And I'm going to tell you this. To this day, I couldn't tell you 100% whether the victim was right or he was right, but if the victim was wrong, and that's a big if, I'm not saying she was, what it does, it makes it harder for real victims to come forward. Women like Christine Baisley Ford, the crap that they tried to pull on Kavanaugh. Leslie, look, there are true rape victims. There are people that have truly been brutalized and sexually assaulted on this earth. I know there are. I know that there are real true blue cases of this. I'm not trying to demean that. But we're in such a justice vacuum right now. It is so terrible to see what our justice system has become, because the victim's credibility. Look, a defense lawyer out there that goes after, and any defense lawyer, and you can't expect him not to do this. That's what he's hired to do. He's hired to defend his client. But so much of this goes back to the credibility of the accuser. And if that accuser is lying, then it just opens this floodgate for everybody that comes after them that are telling the truth. It makes it impossible.
Exactly. Yes.
Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and that's why I brought up, Ashley Judd, because she was accusing Weinstein of preventing her from getting into movies. And one in particular was The Lord of the Ring,
wow.
A series of movies, and he wasn't even producing that movie.
I know.
I don't think he did that, but she's just sort of Me Too,
Yeah, she
hardcore wearing that. I hate to even say the word, the pink hat.
Yeah, the B hat. We'll call it the B hat. Yeah.
The P hat. And she's also confessed to having some mental illness.
Yeah.
So, I just hate the fact that she very well. I'm not going to say that it's not true that what happened, that he didn't try to seduce her. She's saying that he blacklisted her because she turned him down. I'm not saying that isn't true, because I don't know. But unfortunately, Ashley Judd doesn't have a good history. And me being in Los Angeles, prior to anything coming out about Weinstein, Ashley Judd was known as being a nightmare to work.
Absolutely. Leslie, we've got about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going to make these real quick. I'm going to save the Puerto Rico thing for next week, because that's still going to be out there to discuss. But I do want to talk about, we covered a story last week, for those of you that watched last week's McJustice. And speaking of McJustice, we're going to be getting a new website soon, a new YouTube channel strictly for the justice shows that separate these out. And I'm so proud to have my dear friend co-hosting with us. And if she'll stick around, we're going to have her on a lot more in the future. But good. I'm glad to hear that. We had a story last week that 51 perpetrators were arrested over in Texas. And what we didn't really get to was talking about the overarching operation, that those 51 in Texas were part of a bigger operation called Operation Broken Heart. And I want to read this press release off the DOJ's website. It says, the Department of Justice today announced the arrest of almost 1,700 suspected online child sex offenders during a 2-month nationwide operation conducted by the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. The task force identified 308 offenders who either produced child pornography, committed child sex abuse, and 357 children who suffered recent, ongoing, or historical sexual abuse or were exploited in the production of child pornography. The 61 ICAC task force, located in all 50 states and comprised of more than 4,500 federal, state, local, and tribal law enforcement agencies, led the coordinated operation known as Broken Heart during the months of April and May of 2019. The story we did last week was a story that was related to this in Texas, but it said this: during the course of the operation, the task force has investigated, and get this, Leslie, 18,500 complaints of technology facilitated crimes, targeting children and delivered, get this, more than 2,150 presentations on internet safety to over 201,000 youth and adults. Quote, the sexual abuse of children is repugnant and it victimizes the most innocent and vulnerable of all, Attorney General William P. Barr said. Quote, we must bring the full force of the law against sexual predators, and with the help of our Internet Crimes Against Children program, we will. Over the span of just 2 months, our task force investigated more than 18,000 complaints of abuse and helped arrest 1,700 alleged abusers. I would like to thank the office. He goes on to thank them. He says, we are committed to bringing the defendants to justice and protecting every human child. It is interesting here. I want to read this part. The operation, this is the criteria of what they went after. They went after suspects who, number one, produce, distribute, receive, possess child pornography. Number two, engage in online enticement of children for sexual purposes. We talked about this last week. Number three, engage in the sex trafficking of children. And four, travel across state lines or to foreign countries and sexually abuse children. And Leslie, look, that's a lot of information there, but that's to me a lot of folks. 18,000 people, 18,000 complaints.
I'm so sorry, but also received
Yes.
child pornography.
Yes.
That was one thing I think that was in an article that I read, because I don't know if last time I was on the show, I said, they're even tracking people that are receiving
Yes.
the videos of child pornography. And so that was also part of the criteria, I believe, of the people they went after.
That's a lot of folks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think that's all of it? I think there's more than that. I mean, that number may be small for what we're dealing with right now in this country.
Yeah. Well, I think right now it's just starting because of William P. Barr.
Absolutely.
Do it. Before, I mean, I believe that the network crimes against children was established many, many years ago. And it's been more information gathering, and they really haven't sent out. They've been training police officers on how to recognize if someone's been abused, and doing some, sensitive training, or recognizing, when they go into a family, and doing some things. But since just the last few months, our Attorney General is saying go for it, and that has made just a huge difference. I know that the agency was established maybe 20 years ago. I mean, I'm not quite sure, but it was gathering all this information. But that's nice. Gather information. You know who all the producers are. Let's arrest them. And so now it's finally happening. And I thought that was interesting when you said that there's over 200,000 kids that the task force is teaching, how to, especially when it comes to the internet, how to recognize, these predators. I think that some of the predators are public schools, and what they are teaching, and how they're completely desensitized to sexuality and perversion and what is normal. And I would hope that the next step would be that this task force will go in and protect our children from public school teachers. Wouldn't that be nice? Or to train the children right there at the public schools.
Amen. I couldn't say it better, and I'm with you. And look, ultimately, and it's like we talked about last week a little bit on the show, and again, we're not here to be Mr. Spock, but I will tell you this: when it comes to this kind of stuff, we parents got to step up to the plate. We got to start being more vigilant about what our children are watching and listening to and downloading on their computers. And I don't care if they call you a killjoy and you've got no right to get on my computer and you've got no right. Yeah, hell, we do. We got every right in the world. If you're under my house, I got every right to go into your stuff and find out what the hell you're doing, because you're a child. You're not an adult yet. Now, if you want to get your stuff and move out and start your own little place, you can go do that. But as long as you're a child and a teenager under my roof, and I don't have a youngin like that, but I know I can hear some youngins would say tell their parents that. They would tell them that. They say, well, you ain't got no right. Yeah, we do. Yeah, hell, we do. Because let me tell you something. We're trying to protect them. We're trying to protect them from these predators, that they're not caught up in Operation Broken Heart. Because let me tell you something, there's nothing more brokenhearted than a parent who has to pick up the pieces of a sexually abused child that has went off and ran off with a predator and has lost their virginity, been sodomized, been raped. And I don't mean to be blunt, folks, but look, I think we need to be blunt about this, because that's what's out there. That's what's at stake. And that's why we've got to be vigilant. Look, the government's doing what they can, and I applaud Attorney General Barr. Look, I don't think we've ever had an Attorney General with as much brass balls as this man does, and I'm so proud of him, because this is another area, and I have to tip my hat to Sessions too. Sessions was tough on this. But Barr has basically said, you know, we're not going to put up with this behavior in this country. And that's what you needed. But Leslie, it comes down to us. It comes down to the parents. We've got to be diligent too, because the government can only do so much. And if we're letting our kids go into every freaking chat room and letting our kids go to every freaking sex, you know, themed get together, what the hell do we expect? That's just Chris. And I mean, again, that's not my...
You're speaking for millions and millions of people. In fact, most of America. It's just, you know, the demonic sources that are out there. I mean, they're just trying to make just sex, just desensitize it, you know, have sex with 12-year-olds, make it okay, make, you know, just trying to, you know, basically ruin humankind.
Yeah.
So,
Buddy,
I mean, we really need to have some moral compass.
We do.
We need a moral compass, and people need to really have more faith. You know, I would like to, you know, anybody that wants to give me a call, and if you want to talk about religion and faith, and there's some, you know, you're on the line, I'd be happy to talk to you or to, you know, encourage you.
Amen. Amen. I know you would. And you're a fine host, you're a fine lady, and you're a fine friend, and we're just grateful for you today again on McJustice. We got to wrap this up. I will say this. We deliberately didn't talk about Epstein today. I want to save him because it's still a lot of things out there percolating. We covered a little bit of it last week. I'm just going to wait and see what happens. He's in a facility in New York right now. I've been told this is a placeholder indictment. There's more victims coming, and I think we'll have plenty to talk about Epstein in the coming weeks. Another story that we're going to deal with next Thursday, please be with us next week, is the Puerto Rico situation, because that's important. That's a biggie. The Puerto Rican government is as corrupt as night and day, and their leaders have been slamming our president for the response to Hurricane Maria, when in fact these scumbags were taking money, billions of dollars, and embezzling it that was destined for hurricane relief, but yet they're out there criticizing. Well, justice found its way to Puerto Rico this past week, and next week, since we ran out of time today, we're going to pick that up in other cases. We appreciate...
The governor of Puerto Rico, all I remember is him saying that if he ever met Donald Trump, he was going to punch him in the face.
Yeah. He'll have to punch him through the face.
He's been punched in the face,
yeah.
So...
He's going to have to punch Trump through the face through a jail cell now because of that. Ain't that amazing? It's amazing how things happen when you say stuff like that, how it comes back home to roost. Yeah. They should learn a lesson about that. Leslie Birkland, always a great pleasure, friend, to have you on the show, and we're just honored to have you as a co-host, and this has been great again today, and I know it will be next week too. Thank you so much for being with us. Folks, you've been listening to McJustice here on the Mac Files. Please be with us tonight at 10 o'clock. We were going to have Tiffany Fitzhenry, but after interviewing David Rubin today, I just felt a little tug to put him on tonight. You're going to enjoy this interview. David is part of the Shiloh Israel Children's Fund. It's a fund that basically raises money for the trauma victims of terrorism in Israel and all across this world. David's not a small potato. He's been on Fox News. He's been on Lou Dobbs just the other night. He was on Stuart Varney. He's going to be on Fox and Friends first in the morning, but the Mac Files caught him before we got on Fox and Friends, so I feel a little victory lap there about that. But David's a good guy. You're going to enjoy his interview. We don't go about 45 minutes, but it's some powerful stuff. We talk about the Holocaust as well. Join us tonight at 10 o'clock on the Mac Files, and we'll see you back here next week. McJustice, same bat time, same bat channel. I'm not saying I'm Batman. I'm just saying that me and Batman have never been seen in the same room together at the same time. I'm just going to say that and leave it at that. That's why I wore the Bruce Wayne outfit today. You know, Bruce Wayne dressed up as the billionaire, right? He was a millionaire or something. But anyway, all right, having a little fun there. Hey, Birkland, thank you so much, sweetie. Have a good one. Thank you so much. God bless you guys out there. Till next time, McJustice, equal justice for all, faith, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and justice for all. God bless you guys. Till next time. Bye-bye.